Hey everyone, my name is Jake, and today on the third and this time final episode of Off Timin, me and Riley are each going to be ranking all of the studio albums from one of our favorite bands, the Electric Light Orchestra, or ELO. I've been a pretty big fan of ELO for quite a while now. I would say I first started really listening to them around 2021 or 2020. And since then, I've only gotten more and more into their music. I think Jeff Lynne is just an incredible songwriter and producer, and the work that he did with ELO is just amazing, as well as his collaborations with other artists like George Harrison and Tom Petty. And ELO is just one of my all-time favorite bands, along with the Beach Boys and the Beatles. So I'm really looking forward to doing this ranking and also hearing some of Riley's own thoughts on each of these albums. So, Riley, before we begin, do you want to share how you first got into ELO?
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I'm not gonna bullshit with that. I was like I think I was either a freshman or a sophomore in high school when that movie came out, and I was like already like head first into the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
And then that movie came out, and I watched it, and then I was like, "Oh, Mr. Blue Sky is a really good song." So I got into Mr. Blue Sky, and because of that, I got into more of their music. ELO was one of the first bands I got into that was like kind of past my like Beatles only phase. And then about halfway through like my deep dive, I got into Pink Floyd, and it was kind of game from there. So I am a big fan, but that kind of halted until I kind of discovered their music here and there. And then now this is the first time I've listened to every single album by them in like essentially like a week. So I don't know how like what's the word like in tune my list is going to be with everybody else's. We're certainly going to see, but I think that's kind of a good thing because it kind of gives me a completely unbiased view of them.
Yeah.
So.
They've been one of my most listened to bands the past few years. Are usually always up there with the Beach Boys and the Beatles and ABBA and those bands. But I will say, like, for doing this ranking, I did re-listen to a lot of material that I hadn't listened to in a while, especially on those early albums, those first couple albums, as well as some of the more recent stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing how our rankings compare, and then kind of just hearing our viewers' thoughts as well. So it should be fun. All right, Riley. So do you want to go first and share the lowest ranked album on your ranking, or should I start us off? What do you want to do?
I'll start. It's from Out of Nowhere from 2019, and that title is very fitting to the album. It's just I love Jeff Lynne. I think he's one of the all-time great songwriters, and minus that, just like one of the all-time great producers. But this just seems super safe, and it's like it's solid, but there's nothing really exciting here. It's just like here's another Jeff Lynne song, here's another Jeff Lynne song, here's another Jeff Lynne song, and it's I don't want to call him formulaic, but that's kind of how it felt with this one. At least with some of the other ones where like they have their like bad moments, it's like at least it's kind of something new. This was just
Yeah.
what you'd think when you hear Jeff Lynne album from 2019. I don't even have a favorite song. It's just
All right, so for me, I agree with Riley on this. The last album in my ranking at number 14 is from Out of Nowhere from 2019. This was the second Jeff Lynne's ELO album, and it's also the most recent ELO album as well. I don't think this album is bad, but it's just really unmemorable, especially when you compare it to most of ELO's other albums. I'm not a huge fan of the production on this. It honestly sounds very stale and just kind of lifeless. The songs just don't really have a lot of energy. I think Jeff's vocals are still pretty good. It's pretty incredible how well his voice has held up over the years. But the material I just don't think is the strongest. The title track from Out of Nowhere is okay, but it's nothing special. It's not really a track I come back to. Losing You is a decent ballad, kind of has like a melancholic vibe to it. But again, I don't really come back to it. I think Jeff's done better ballads than that. Sci-Fi Woman is a pretty fun song. It has a catchy chorus. That's maybe the closest thing to a memorable song in this album. Re-listening to that one, I was like, yeah, this is pretty decent. But again, it's not one that I would probably choose to put on often. Going Out on Me is kind of a simple doo-wop style song that I think is all right. And yeah, overall, I think that this album is listenable and there are a few nice moments, but I just don't think it's a strong album from Jeff, considering all the amazing music that he's put out over the years. I just don't think it's up to par for him. But again, not terrible by any means, just not very memorable, which with Jeff Lynne, you expect memorable, really enjoyable albums. So that's number 14 on my list.
especially like with some of his other stuff. It's like if you listen to this album on its own, it'd be like pretty decent, pretty solid. But when you hear it after, I don't know, listening to every single other album that he's made, it's like this, like, I just want to be done. I mean, yeah, I gotta be honest. Not a fun listen. I don't think I'm ever gonna touch that album again. But, and the same could be said for Secret Messages. It's like when I think I told Jake, I was like going into this one, I was like, is this just gonna be like a really stale, unmemorable album? No, it's memorable just for like the wrong reasons. It's and I will say what it has over from Out of Nowhere is highlights. I think title track was pretty solid. And I think it's Bluebird. Is that the name of the song on it?
Yep.
Does he have two songs named Bluebird?
He has Bluebird is Dead on the third day, and then there's Bluebird on Secret Messages. Yeah.
All right, because I wrote down Bluebird twice, so I was kind of nervous for a second that I messed up. But yeah, that's about it. But I will say it's certainly a bit more memorable than the other one. It's just like some of these. I know he went from synth pop, or no synth pop, and they're like, no, don't do synth pop. So we went back.
No,
He should have not have shouldn't have gone back. He should have just kept going forward. Because I don't know, man. It's again another tough listen, and the fact that it was, I could see why it was cut down from a double album to a single album because I do not want more of this. Although some of the double album tracks that were cut are arguably better than the ones that were on the main album. So kind of goes to show the quality of that one. But that being said, past this point, these are some solid albums that I really like. So
thoughts on Rock and Roll is King, Riley?
the funny thing is, I used to like that one in high school, but like that was back when I was like in the infant stage of finding music. So like that compared to like a lot of the other ones, I was like, oh, this is a cool song.
Yeah.
But no, not anymore.
Yeah.
Whamma
No. Yeah.
No, I mean again, it's like something I will say now. I'm not a huge fan of Jeff's rockers compared to some of his other songs. He has some great ones, but then he also has Whamma blah blah Rock and Roll's King, and they kind of feel all samey. But I would much rather listen to those samey ones compared to whatever the fuck that is. I did like it when I was younger though. So,
all right. So number 13 on my ranking. This is the other Jeff Lynne's ELO album, Alone in the Universe from 2015. So this was the first album released under the Jeff Lynne's ELO name. And I do think that overall it is stronger than From Out of Nowhere, although I wouldn't say that it's spectacular by any means either. I think the songwriting and production is definitely stronger, and there are actually a couple of tracks on here that I do come back to. The opener, When I Was a Boy, I think is the clear standout. This is a really pretty ballad, very like Beatlesque in its sound. Really nice lyrics from Jeff as well about like his love of music growing up and just dreaming to be a musician. So I really like that. Love and Rain is a cool kind of bluesy track. I do like the guitar on that one. I think it sounds pretty cool. One Step at a Time is a pretty catchy and upbeat song that I enjoy quite a bit. I do like the melody and the chorus, and I like the guitar throughout this one too. And then lastly, the closing track, Alone in the Universe, I think is a pretty track. Has kind of a melancholic vibe to it, which I like. I also want to shout out the bonus track, Blue. That song has a really nice little melody to it, kind of an acoustic track. I really like that one as well. So overall, this is a decent album, but again, it's just not strong enough to get repeated listening from me. And I think when you compare this to other ELO albums, especially from the 70s and 80s, it just doesn't hold up. But all in all, it's not a bad album by any means. It's okay.
yeah, that was the next one I was going to talk about, Alone in the Universe. I guess if you took From Out of Nowhere and kind of upped the quality of the songs, like a couple of notches, it's pretty much a similar thing, except I do have a standout, and it is When I Was a Boy. I knew that one when I was in high school, and I know this one now. Really pretty song. And I think this one has over From Out of Nowhere. I feel like the production is a lot less stale, which when it comes to Jeff Lynne, like he can take the most simple songs and give them excellent production, and it just absolutely like blasts the quality of it. That being said, I don't think it's as strong as any of the other ones after this. Like there was a jump from that and from Secret Messages to that, and now there's an exponential jump from this one to the next one. I mean, again, it was kind of what you expect from, I think it was 2013, like a 2013 Jeff Lynne album, but it's definitely much better quality than the other ones. And I do see myself at the very least going back to When I Was a Boy. So that alone kind of gets it as high as it does.
All right. So coming in at number 12 on my ranking, we have the ELO's debut album, which is also known as No Answer in the US, but everywhere else it was just self-titled. So this was their first album. It was also the first of two ELO albums to feature Roy Wood, who was also in the band The Move, along with Jeff and Bev Bevan. This album, I think, is kind of inconsistent, but it is unique. Unlike ELO's later records, I think this one has a really raw sound to it, which makes it stand out. And it also features two songwriters contributing material. So you have Jeff Lynne's songs as well as Roy Wood's songs. This album opens really strongly with 10538 Overture. I think this is easily the highlight of the record. This has an awesome raw sound with this really heavy guitar riff that really rocks. And I also love like the sawing cello riffs on this song as well. And you hear that throughout the album too. So I think that that's a really awesome track. Great way to open the album. The next track, Look at Me Now. This one was written by Roy Wood. It isn't bad, but it just sounds like a Lester Eleanor Rigby to me. So I'm not really a big fan of it. Don't love his vocal on it either. So I don't really love that one. I also don't really love the next two tracks either. Nellie Takes Her Bow and Battle of Marston Moor. Battle of Marston Moor was written by Roy Wood, and it's one of the only like completely unlistenable ELO tracks for me. I think it's just awful. It's not even really a song. It's just like, I don't even know what it is, but it's terrible. And there's like this awful like speaking at the beginning too. I just hate it. I think it's terrible. So that song is not good. First Movement, Jumping Biz is a cool little instrumental. It has kind of a cool blend of guitar and cello, which I like, and it has a cool horn section as well. So that's a decent little track. Mr. Radio is easily the most ELO sounding song on here. That one was written by Jeff Lynne. I like the melody of this song, and I also like the use of piano and cello. It's probably my second favorite song in the album, to 10538 Overture. Manhattan Rumble is another instrumental. It has kind of a cool piano part, but I can't say it really works as a whole for me. I kind of get bored of it. Queen of the Hours, decent song from Jeff again. Has some heavy cello, which makes it a little more memorable. But again, wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine. And then the album closes with Whisper in the Night by Roy Wood, which is also a decent song, but it's still not one that I really come back to much. So overall, I would say this is a pretty decent debut. It has a couple of really great songs on it, but it is very inconsistent, and I don't think the band had really found their true sound yet. But it is a unique listen for sure. It definitely stands out from the rest of their albums, and that it has a much more raw sound, especially with like the sound of the cellos. So an interesting listen for sure, but number 12 for me.
Yeah, I got a lot to say about that one. But not right now. Balance of Power. I really want to like this album a lot. I want this to be like a 10 out of 10. It's not to say it's bad though. I think it's a solid like 6.5, maybe a generous 7 out of 10 effort. It's just, I feel like what I said before, the songwriting is a bit stale, and the only thing that really brings it up is the absolutely killer production from Jeff Lynne. I think the production absolutely shines on this one, and if the songwriting was even like a little bit better, I could see this one going up a lot on my list. But because I was really like sucked in with Heaven Only Knows and So Serious, I'm like, oh, this thing's gonna fucking rock. And then after a while, it kind of got a little samey for me. I can't really remember any of the other names of the other tracks on the album. I'd have to look that up, which kind of goes to show it's like, wow, the production is absolutely killer. The songs themselves are a bit unmemorable, which kind of hurts because Jake said, oh, you're going to like this one. It's like Beach Boys 85. I'm like, all right, let's fucking do this. And then past like the fourth track, I'm like, oh, man. And I guess just to say some Beach Boys 85, I can name like, maybe it's because I listened to it so much that I can name all the memorable moments. On this one, past the first two songs, I can't really do that. But that being said, the production makes the album itself very memorable for me because this is like full 80s and I'm absolutely here for it. And to be fair, it's like the first time I've listened to this album maybe ever. So if I listen to it a couple more times, I'll probably like it a lot more. But that being said, besides the first few tracks, it's not super memorable, but I do think it's absolutely worth a listen. Definitely more than the other three I mentioned. So it's definitely worth a listen. It's just at the moment right now, it's not very memorable for me. Minus the first two tracks. So just fucking rocked.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have some more thoughts on that one pretty soon. So all right, so coming in at number 11 on my ranking, we have Secret Messages from 1983. I know that there's some people in the ELO fan base who really like this album. They think, oh, it should have been released as a double album. This is like so good. It's like Jeff at his best. I am not in that camp at all. I think that the album really pales in comparison to the ELO records that came before it, especially Time. And to me, the songwriting and production just is not as strong here, like at all. Although there are still a few solid tracks. I think that the title track, Secret Messages, is easily the highlight here for me. I think this song really rocks. I love the 80s production and guitar on it. I love the way that it starts. It's just a really great track. I think it's a good effort. I don't think that it's quite as strong as some other ELO album openers, like Turn to Stone and Twilight, but I still think it's a really great way to start the record. Bluebird, which Riley already mentioned, is a pretty decent track. I do like the synth effect on this one. I will say I'm not so crazy about the backing vocals though, especially that work part. I don't really like that at all. I find that very annoying. So not a fan of that part of the song, but I do think it's a decent track. Four Little Diamonds and Danger Ahead are both decent rockers. Four Little Diamonds is a little bit reminiscent of Don't Bring Me Down from Discovery, but I still think it's an enjoyable song. And Danger Ahead is a pretty catchy melody and some cool guitar throughout it. The song Stranger is pretty strong. I really like the lyrics and production on this one. I don't think the chorus is the best, but I do really like the verses and the smooth production on them. And it's probably my second favorite song on the album. The closer, Rock and Roll is King, is probably the most well-known song from this album. I think it is just okay at best. It's pretty much Jeff trying to write like a 50s style rock and roll song, which he done before with like other songs like Hold On Tight from Time. But this one just feels a bit generic and forced to me. I don't love the whamma lamma bama bama or whatever.
I hate that part.
I think that's really annoying. I don't like the effect of that. I don't like it. Besides those songs, though, I think the rest of the material on Secret Messages ranges from okay to pretty underwhelming. Letter from Spain is maybe the most boring song in the entire ELO catalog, and it just does not go anywhere. I don't know what he was thinking with that one. I think it's just super, super boring. I also feel that most of the extra tracks that were intended to be included on the original double album release are not the strongest either, and I can see why they were cut. Mandalay and Time After Time in particular, I thought were extremely annoying. I hate the backing vocals on Time After Time, like that Time After Time. I think that's terrible. And Mandalay has this really like whiny chorus, like Mandalay. I don't like that either. I do think Buildings Have Eyes is a decent song that probably could have made the album, but besides that, I'm just not really impressed with this album at all. I wouldn't say it's the worst ELO album, and I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a bad album. But by ELO standards, especially ELO standards at that point in history when it came out, I think this is just very disappointing. And for me, this really marks the end of ELO's great run of albums from the mid 70s to early 80s. So overall, really underwhelming album. I'll give it another listen in the future, but from the listens I've given it, I've just not been impressed with it whatsoever. So that's number 11 on my ranking.
Yeah, I'm not listening to it again. If you don't like it, I definitely.
I will say re-listen to Stranger. That's a solid track. Let's say re-listen to Stranger.
Wasn't that also on Balance of Power?
No, that's another song. I'm trying to think what that one is.
That was repeated, right?
There's a song that was gonna make Secret Messages, but then it got cut. So then it ended up on Balance of Power, and it was released on the double album version of Secret Messages. But I forgot.
Man, I listened to way more of that album than I should have. Again, I don't like hate it. It's just there's a lot of like points that stick out so much, and I just. All right, are we on number 10?
Number 10, yeah, top 10.
I got Zoom. A step up. I do think it's the highs of this one are quite a bit higher than Balance of Power. Moment in Paradise is such a great song. I did not expect this album to be as quality as it is. That being said, after a while, it kind of gets a little samey, which is something that is a problem with me, especially with ELO, is like I really like when Jeff Lynne surprises you. He'll take like a random chord progression and you're like, oh, I know exactly where this is going. And then like 5 seconds later, you're blown away by where he took the song. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, like awesome, like surprising with the chord progression, the production itself surprises you, which is something I really like on a lot of like my higher ranking albums. That being said, I don't think Zoom has many of those moments. And actually minus after the first 2 tracks, I kind of similarly to Balance of Power, I kind of just get bored for a little bit. That being said, for a late period album, this is one of the best I've heard from any band. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say. It's kind of what you expect from a 2001 Jeff Lynne album, but it's still very, very good. I think it's very high quality, and it really caught me off guard. And if I listen to it again more and more, I'm sure I will actually like it a lot better. But seeing what I have above this, I don't know if it would really like change its spot in my rankings, but I would definitely grow to appreciate it a lot more. So, Zoom from 2001.
All right, so coming in at number 10 on my ranking is ELO 2 from 1973. So this is one of the band's most prog-sounding albums, I would say. Most of the songs on here have pretty heavy guitar and production. They also have lengthy instrumental sections on most of the tracks. This was also the second and last ELO album to feature Roy Wood, who had already left the band by the time that this record had come out. It's also the first to feature Richard Tandy on keyboard, who would stay in the band for many years and was a close friend of Jeff's. There's only 5 songs on this album because most of the run times of the songs are much longer. But anyway, it opens with Old England Town, which has some nice instrumental sections, but I don't really love Jeff's vocal on this. I find it very grating, and it's just not a song I really come back to much. But the next track, Mama, is actually my favorite song on the album. I really love the melody of this. It's very melodic. And I love the beautiful string arrangement as well. I think the lyrics are really sad and moving as well, and they perfectly fit the sound of the music, like the mood. But like the other tracks on here, it is a little bit long, but it doesn't really overstay its welcome for me. And in my opinion, it's one of the more underrated songs in the ELO catalog. Roll Over Beethoven is a strong cover and it really rocks. I love the blend of the guitar with the strings and horns. And I also like how it mixes together the Chuck Berry song with like real Beethoven. I think that that's pretty creative and fun. I will say it is a bit long for my liking, and I do feel that a few minutes could have been chopped off of it like they did on the single release. But overall, it's still an enjoyable track. From the Sun of the World, another song with some lengthy instrumental sections. On this one, I do like Jeff's vocal parts quite a bit. I think you could also argue that this is maybe the most prog rock sounding song on the album in terms of the instrumentation. There's parts of it I can appreciate and enjoy, especially the faster sections with like the really frantic piano and strings. But as a whole, it's not a track that I really come back to too often, but it is growing on me. And then lastly, the closing track, Kiyama, has a nice melody, and the lyrics are pretty dark and serious compared to most of Jeff's other material with ELO. But it just goes on a little too long for me, and I wish that it was 4 or 5 minutes instead of 11. I don't think it really justifies that runtime, but all in all, I don't think ELO 2 is as strong as many of the albums that followed it from ELO, but I do think there's some solid tracks on it, and if you're a prog rock fan, I could definitely see a lot of the material on here clicking with you. But for me, Mama and Roll Over Beethoven are definitely the highlights on here for me.
I have a lot to say about that one, but not yet. The next one I'm going to talk about, number 9, is the debut. No Answer in the U.S. On one hand, I really like a lot of what I'm hearing, especially when you get to those more like orchestral moments. Something I never thought I would say, because it's truly more like classical music in parts than it is like pop or rock. But I still really enjoy it. I think it's first of all, the opener, 10538 Overture.
Yeah.
I wish he gave it another name. Kind of threw me off guard because I was like, oh my God, this whole album's like this. It might be like my number one. It's not.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's like I feel like rather than what he did later, where he truly mashed together orchestral stuff and like pop and melodic stuff together, you have pop and melodic stuff for like 2 minutes, and then the next like 5 minutes is just like all classical. And like it kind of works way more than it should, but at the same time, it also doesn't. Like those couple of songs you mentioned that are in the middle of the album, I didn't really rock with them too much. But then again, you have the opener with the 10538 Overture, and Mr. Radio is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, this is really a sign of what's to come. I didn't mind a lot of the Roy Wood songs. I feel like it's just for this band, he doesn't really fit, but I do like his stuff. I feel like if he joined like Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, he'd probably fit in a bit more. I forgot the name of the last song of the album that he did. I thought that one was pretty all right.
Wishbone. Yeah.
Whatever one, yeah, that one. I don't know. I only listened to this album today. So these are very fresh, but I thought it was pretty solid. And maybe it's just because it's so different from the rest of the stuff that they did that it ranks so high on here, because I listened to this one nearly last. Like I was coming off of all the 70s albums where after a while those kind of got a little bit boring. It's just like, all right, another melodic Jeff Lynne song, another melodic Jeff Lynne song. And then I get to this like folky classical stuff with Roy Wood, which I really appreciated. That being said, I don't think it's as strong as anything else they did past this on my list, but I do appreciate this for being so different. And if you are a fan of Yes or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you're probably going to like this, especially early Yes material from like 69, 70. You'll really like this one. Definitely worth a listen.
Yeah. I think with Roy Wood's contributions, like they do contrast Jeff's nicely, but also they're not really the commercial sound that ELO ended up going for. Like I really couldn't see Roy Wood staying in the band very long anyway, regardless of if he had stayed after like ELO 2. I just think that the direction that this band went in with Jeff was just a much more commercial direction, and Roy Wood was more into like proggy sounding songs. So yeah, right. I don't think he was a great fit, like you said, for this type of band.
And I do think that like, I mean, I know this was like pretty much either the very end or like right after the move. So I think they were very much trying to find a new sound. And while I appreciate Roy Wood's contributions, because I do think they're good, it's just like they clash a little bit too much. And if he didn't leave, we probably wouldn't have gotten the big names from the mid to late 70s that we got. So
Yep.
I do appreciate it, and I think, like I said, he would fit like early era, yes, better than ELO.
All right. So coming in at number 9 in my ranking, we have Balance of Power from 1986. So I know that this album has kind of a reputation among listeners of not being very good. I think part of that is because it was sort of a contractual obligation. Jeff essentially owed CBS Records one more album. So he went into the studio and put this album together pretty much by himself. I wouldn't say any of the songs on here are spectacular, but I do think there are some really catchy and fun synth pop tracks. And this album has really grown on me over time. Some of the highlights for me, the opening track, Heaven Only Knows, is probably my favorite song on the album. I really like the melody on this and the synth effects. And I really like the guitar solo towards the end as well. This is a really energetic and rocking song, which I do like. So Serious, another really catchy and fun song. I get that chorus, the So Serious chorus, stuck in my head all the time. And I do like that little synth line at the end of the chorus as well. That's super cool. Like Riley said, the production really elevates a lot of these tracks for me. Getting to the Point and With One are slower ballads with kind of like melancholic lyrics about the end of a relationship. I do like the verses of both of these songs quite a bit. I'm not as crazy about the choruses, but they are still decent enough. Is It All Right is another really catchy song with a fun chorus. I enjoy that one quite a bit. I've been listening to it a lot lately. Sorrow About to Fall has a really cool sound to it, and I like the use of saxophone on this one. It really adds to the vibe of the track, so that's a cool track. Calling America was a top 40 hit from this album in the US, and it seems to be the most beloved song from this album by a lot of fans. Personally, I think it's okay. Like, I think it's a decent song. It has like a catchy melody, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite on here by any means. I definitely prefer Heaven Only Knows and So Serious. And then the album closes with Send It, which is another fun and catchy song. Nothing too special, but it's enjoyable enough. So also, I wanted to mention a couple of the outtakes from this album, In for the Kill and A Matter of Fact. I think that both of these tracks are really catchy and they have some really cool synth work on them, especially on A Matter of Fact. And I feel that they're both stronger than quite a bit of the material that made this album. So I would have included those songs on this album. I think they would have elevated it. So overall, I wouldn't say Balance of Power is a great album by any means. But if you just judge it as an 80s synth pop album, I do think it has some fun and catchy moments. And I don't think it's near as bad as some people make it out to be. So Balance of Power, that's the 9th album on my ranking.
Totally agree. And Getting to the Point has the worst chorus ever. It's just,
I know, because the verses are so like haunting and like
right.
And then it's like getting to the point. I'm like, oh god, it's not a
It's
good
like it's like a 10-year-old wrote the chorus. It's like what you'd expect them to like.
That, you know,
like,
that's
I will say that was almost one of my favorites on there. Like I was like, oh, this is gonna be my favorite song. I get to the chorus and just, oh man.
that's kind of how I feel about Stranger from Secret Messages too, because it has this really pretty verse, and then it gets to the chorus. It's like, look into the eyes of a stranger. I'm like, look into the eyes of danger. Like, I think the chorus lets it down a bit, but yeah. I will say, Riley, listen to In for the Kill and A Matter of Fact. I think you would like those songs. I really do.
All right. I will. Number 8, I have A New World Record.
Woo.
What?
That's pretty low.
Oh shit. Shows you how much I know about this the
no, it's your opinion, man. Your ranking.
That being said, I know I keep saying this, that there's like a big step up, but there's like a really big step up here. And it's the first 2 songs might be 2 of the best songs Jeff Lynne ever wrote, period. Tightrope was the opener, I think. Yep. That's like, the second I heard that, like, this is the perfect blend of what Jeff wanted with like orchestral, classical music, and rock and roll. It's truly like the perfect blend with that. And I love how it's like, but unlike with the debut where it's like I said, where there's like 2 minutes of orchestral and like there's like 5 minutes of pop, like this is like the opening like intro is like orchestral and it's like bam right into the song, and there's like the little breakdown, but it's like truly the perfect blend of like finding the balance of power of it.
God.
But and then Telephone Line has like one of the like greatest choruses I've ever heard. It's like, one telephone line, like,
yeah,
do-a-lang, do-a-lang. It's like Wham-a-limma, but like done right in a song. And it, like that like caught me, it hit me like a truck. The only other choruses that I can really think of that had that power, like showing you how much I really like that chorus, is Made of Stone from the Stone Roses and I Am the Resurrection from the Stone Roses. Like that's the like how powerful that those choruses are. And then after that, I kind of forget a couple of the other tracks because They're kind of like 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10 tracks. Then you get to Living Thing, which is like a fucking amazing song. And then you have a couple more tracks that are like 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10 tracks. And then you have Do Ya and yeah, those really Do Ya, Living Thing, and the first two are like 10 out of 10 songs. And then the other ones are just kind of there. I guess I hate saying this about Jeff Lynne because I think he's one of the best songwriters of all time, but you kind of get samey with them. And it's like they kind of sound the same. They blend into each other. Shangri-La is awesome. And I really like the fading like the Beatles on Hey Jude part. That's the only other one where I could say it's like a standout. But some of those, I don't want to call them filler tracks because Jeff Lynne's an incredible songwriter, but to me, they're just like so fillery and they're so samey that I can't really get into them as much as like the highlights. So this one with a New World Record, you have like a lot of like 10 out of 10 songs, and then the rest is just like 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. So I can't really rank it that much higher. But from what Jake's reaction, I can tell this is a fan favorite album. So putting it at number 8 might be dangerous for me.
Yeah, I'll have many thoughts on that later in the episode. All right, so coming in at number 8 on my ranking, we have Zoom from 2001. So I know that this album, a lot of fans kind of judge it as like not being a real ELO album and just more of a Jeff Lynne solo album, since he's really kind of the only person involved with it. But honestly, a lot of the songs on here do just sound like more modern ELO tracks to me, so I don't really mind that. And songwriting-wise, I actually think this album is pretty solid. There's quite a few standout tracks on here that I do come back to regularly. In terms of the highlights, as Riley mentioned, Moment in Paradise is a very pretty song. I love the piano on it, and I think it's one of the best tracks on the album, probably the highlight. Just for Love is another really pretty ballad. I really love the production on this one. It has kind of a haunting vibe to it, and that just really works for me. It's probably the song that I come back to the most on this album, so I really like that one too. Stranger on a Quiet Street has a great chorus, and that's another track that I enjoy. But besides those songs, I also like Ordinary Dream, It Really Doesn't Matter, and A Long Time Gone, which actually features George Harrison on guitar, so I think that's pretty cool. And a few of the tracks on here, I will say I don't really like, but overall, I would say that Zoom is a pretty enjoyable latter day ELO album, even if it isn't technically an ELO record. So I would recommend giving this one a listen sometime if any of our listeners haven't heard it, because like Riley said, considering this came out in 2001, it's a surprisingly solid effort from a band that really was at their peak in popularity in the 70s. So really a solid effort. So that's my 8th album on my ranking.
I also really like All Right. I don't know if I mentioned that. All right, number 7, I have El Dorado. I'm waiting for Jake's reaction. All right, nothing crazy.
All right.
Not sacrilegious. I think the opener with I think it's a little overture in the beginning or prologue. I kind of forget when he does the concept albums, he always has that little opener that he does.
Yeah, it's overture. Yeah,
overture. But can't get it out of my head is maybe like in my top 10 favorite songs from the band. I feel like that's not really an outrageous opinion. It kind of slows down for me a bit though. But then once I got to the second half, I was kind of shocked because at first I was like, oh, it's just gonna have like a couple of good songs, whatever, lots of orchestration, whatever. And then he hits Mr. Kingdom, Nobody's Child. The second half is absolutely incredible. That being said, it kind of slows down a little bit more. But what I really like about this one is kind of the cohesion of it. Like even though some of the songs blend together in the middle, there's still some moments in there that I can really like hook myself. Like there's a lot of hooks in the middle too, even though it's like on some songs I might not remember super well. And I do like how in the second half, a lot of the songs just blend right into the next one. It's super cool. That's like the prog moments I really look for. I know Jake doesn't think that they're a prog band. I think they are, even though they have a little bit more poppy, but I really like this one. I think as a whole album listen, it's a lot better than a New World Record, which has some like what I consider some pretty low moments. On this one, it's like all 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10s, and then you have songs like Mr. Kingdom and Can't Get It Out of My Head. I absolutely love those. Hopefully I'm not sacrilegious with my past 2 picks.
Yeah, I'm glad you like Mr. Kingdom. I like that one a lot too. I'll talk about that one when I get to the album. Also, in terms of ELO being prog, I view it like they're mostly a progressive pop band, like with like their later 70s albums, and then they have some like prog rock elements on some of the earlier albums, I feel like. But I wouldn't call them straight up prog. I think they're too pop to be considered just straight up prog, but they have some
I'll get more to that opinion later. I mean, I'll go into it once I get to some of my higher ranking stuff.
All right, so the 7th album on my ranking is On the Third Day from 1973, which was ELO's 3rd album. So this album for me, this really marks the point where ELO's albums took a big leap in quality. I do think their first two albums had some enjoyable moments, but I think that this one is pretty strong from start to finish. It's another one of their most prog sounding albums, in my opinion. There's some really awesome synthesizer playing throughout this record. And I really like how Jeff blends together the synthesizers and the strings on many of these tracks. Some of the highlights for me, Bluebird is Dead is a pretty strong ballad. I like the use of strings on the chorus of this song. And there's also some cool synth and guitar solos towards the end that I like. New World Rising, Ocean Breakup, Reprise. This is an awesome song. I love how the verses build in intensity and launch into like this really epic sounding synthesizer solo. I also really love the use of strings throughout this one, and Jeff's vocal is really great as well. Showdown is the most well-known song from this album, and it's really great. I love kind of the funky groove of it. That's not really something you would expect from ELO, especially like at this early stage. But I think it's really cool. I love the funky sound. And again, the use of strings is just awesome. It really adds a lot to the song. Daybreaker is an amazing instrumental. I love the way that the synthesizer and the strings are used together on this. I think it just sounds so cool. And it's one of my favorite ELO instrumentals. Ma 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 Bell absolutely rocks. This song has a killer vocal from Jeff, one of his grittiest vocals. And just some awesome guitar, which I believe was played by Mark Bullen from T-Rex, which is why it has that really heavy guitar tone. So really like that song as well. I think it's one of ELO's best rockers. Dreaming of 4000. This is one of the most prog sounding songs in the album, and I actually really love it. It's divided into like 3 or 4 different sections musically, and I love pretty much all of them. I really like the intense guitar riff that opens this song. And I also like the really slow middle section as well. I think this is just another really underrated track in the ELO catalog that only fans know. So I think that's a really cool song. And then the album closes with a cover of In the Hall of the Mountain King, which unfortunately I think is the weakest track on here. I don't think it's a strong way to end the record. It's not bad, but it does go on too long, and it's not really that interesting to me musically. But overall, though, on the third day, it's a pretty enjoyable listen. I think it easily surpasses the band's first 2 albums in terms of songwriting and production. And again, I really love the use of synthesizer throughout this album. I think it's really a cool sound. So that is the 7th album on my ranking.
All right. Yeah, Mama Bell sounds like an AC/DC song like 6 years early. It sounds just like an AC/DC song. I'm saying that AC/DC ripped them off. Or one of those like heavy rock bands from the 80s that are kind of shit. I'm gonna get some flack for that. So number 7, when I already said that. Number 6, I have ELO 2. I think this one is super strong beginning to end, but it's pretty easily the most prog rock they get. I know I just said they're a prog band, but like this is like really like this is like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, yes, early Genesis kind of prog. But beginning to end is really strong. Roll Over Beethoven, I was really scared for. It wasn't like great, but I don't think it was bad either. I give like a solid 6 out of 10. I agree with Jake because it's a cover. I don't think that it needs to go to like 8 minutes. That being said, I disagree with you on Kuyama. I forgot how to say it. That one deserves the 11-minute runtime that it gets. I was really shocked with this one. I was really expecting it as just more of the debut, and I was just going to be like, oh, I'm just going to put it last. No, it's far from it. I think Mama and Kuyama are great songs. And then there's like the 3 other tracks that are like super proggy that I really liked. They went on probably way longer than Jake wanted them to, but I really couldn't get enough of it. I forgot their names because I'm working with this for my notes, but I think they're really strong throughout. It reminded me a lot of Close to the Edge from Yes, except ELO version of it. But it's just like I was really expecting it to be like, oh, just orchestration and classical music for 8 minutes. But no, there's a lot of pop elements. There's a lot of hooks in what is supposed to be like a proggy song. It reminded me a lot of Atom Heart Mother by Pink Floyd, which is a very like intermittent album where it's like stuck in between 2 different eras of a band. But there's also on its own is really well done. So I really like ELO 2. It's a great record beginning to end. I don't know how much I'll revisit individual songs, but in terms of like a whole album, this is one I'm going to go to probably a bit more than I thought I would.
Yeah, you are definitely more of the fan opinion on Kiyama because people do really like that one a lot. For me,
that and Mama, beautiful song. It's just a great songwriting from Jeff. And then like the froggy elements of it where there's like little like jams. I really like that part too, especially in Kuyama. Didn't expect that when I was in the shower when I was listening to that track. And I remember like opening the shower door and be like, what the fuck song's on? and I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I
Yeah.
heard that one's about Vietnam.
Yeah, apparently it's about like a US soldier explaining to like a young Vietnamese girl that like he killed her mother or her father. And that like he was kind of forced to be there by the US. So it's very, very deep and dark lyrical subject matter from Jeff Lynne. Because usually you think of Jeff and it's like a lot of like beat and fun.
Mr. Blue Sky.
Right. And it's like this is his like Vietnam song, so his war song. So yeah, interesting lyrics. But all right, so at number 6 on my ranking, I know this album ranks higher for Riley. I'm gonna go with Discovery from 1979. So this album is sometimes considered to be ELO's disco record because a few of the tracks on here have kind of a disco sound to them. But honestly, I just kind of view it as a smooth late 70s pop rock album. I know a lot of fans and critics don't really hold this album in as high regard as some of ELO's other 70s albums. But personally, I think it's actually a really solid album with a lot of great material on it. It opens with Shine a Little Love, which is one of the more disco sounding songs in the album. This one actually rocks pretty hard. I like the verse melody, and I really like the driving guitar after the chorus. I really like that heavy sound of it. I wouldn't say it's my favorite song on the album, but I do still enjoy it, and I think it's a solid way to start the record. The next track, Confusion, has a really great melody, and I love the synth on it as well. I definitely think it's one of the highlights of the record. Need Your Love is a beautiful ballad that I really love. I love the slide guitar on this. It's like very like George Harrison-esque. And I just think it's a beautiful track. I love the melody. I love Jeff's vocal. It does go on a bit long, but I love it so much that I don't really care. I just think it's a really beautiful ballad. The Diary of Horace Wimp. I used to not like this song at all. I thought it was extremely annoying. It has grown on me a little bit over time. I don't skip it anymore. It's on my ELO playlist, but it still does get on my nerves sometimes. I do not like the part towards the end of the song where they keep repeating Horace, 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 Horace. I think that's extremely annoying. I don't know what that's about. But regardless, the song's all right, but I don't think it's one of Jeff's best efforts. Last Train to London. This is another one of the most disco sounding tracks on the album, but I think this one is really strong, even better than Shine a Little Love. Really catchy, infectious melody, and I really love the production on this one. Has a really cool bass line as well. Probably my favorite song on the album. It's the one I come back to the most. Midnight Blue is a really pretty ballad with some cool synthesizer. I like that one a lot. On the Run and Wishing, both pretty solid tracks. I really like the strings and the piano on Wishing. It has kind of a soulful sound to it, which I like. And then the album closes very strongly with Don't Bring Me Down, which I think is one of ELO's very best rockers. I love the guitar riff on this and the drum sound, which I believe I read they created using like tape loops. And it's just an awesome song that never gets old. So overall, a Discovery, really enjoyable album. And I do think it deserves a little more appraisal than it gets because really from start to finish, it's a lot of really solid songs. And the highlights on here are really, really great. So that's number 6 in my ranking, Discovery.
I've got a lot to say about Discovery. Not yet, though.
Top 5.
Top 5. All right, number 5, I got Time. I think you really expected me. Did you expect this to be like my number 1?
I honestly,
I think
top 5. I expect it to be top 5. Yeah.
I think it has potential to be my favorite album from the band. I could tell this is one that you need to listen to more than once to really take in. I don't think to understand, because I can really understand what's going on musically, but like to really like take in everything. That being said, I did not expect myself to like this one that much. I kind of feel like I was a little nervous when I heard Jeff Lynne concept album because he's great pop songwriter, but like I don't know if concept albums are his thing, but clearly he has some potential with them. Yours Truly 2095 is a fucking incredible song. That one blew me away when I first heard it. It was like, this is kind of like Talking Heads meets Pink Floyd. I really loved that one. And I loved his approach to the verses. And what I really liked, especially about this whole album, is that it's kind of him doing something new, not necessarily with just the synths, but also melodically, because I feel like once he got to Discovery, he kind of hit a bit of a formula. And then once he gets to this album, all of that's kind of thrown away for the most part because there's a lot of different stuff he does melodically and also like rhythmically and the whole production idea. Like I absolutely love the synths throughout the entire album. I think there's a killer instrumental on here that I forgot the name of, but I wish I could remember right now. Lights Go Down reminds me of The Tide Is High by the Paragons and Blondie.
Yes,
and I absolutely love it. I did not expect Jeff to go with that on a sci-fi concept album, but I'm here for it. what is my God? Another Heart Breaks. I think that's the name of the instrumental.
Yeah, that's the yeah.
Absolutely love that. The synthesizers on this record, everything that I loved about the synthesizers on Balance of Power, he does here about 10 times better. I absolutely love this album sonically. I think the songwriting's super good. I'm not a huge fan of Hold Tight, but then again, I think I kind of said that before. I'm not a huge fan of his rockers. I feel like they're a bit almost generic, but I do appreciate the sonic value of this rocker that he does. I think I need to give this album a couple more listens. It could probably get a little bit higher, but it's facing some tough competition with me. I'm pretty happy with it, number 5. And like Jake said, I'm not saying anything sacrilegious because he expected it to be top 5. But yeah, I absolutely love his approach with this album. I'm kind of shocked that Secret Messages came right after this. The synthesizers was the way to go for Jeff. I feel like him and synthesizers were meant to be together. I also think I read a quote where he's like, when I first started doing orchestration, I was like, oh, I'm ready to do the strings. And then after about a couple of years of doing it, it's like, oh, I have to do the strings again. So I'm so glad that he picked up the synthesizers because he knows how to make a song pop sonically. And what he does with the synthesizers, like the way I hear the synthesizers when I listen to the song is absolutely like mind blowing. I love what he does with this album. I got to listen to it a little bit more. There's a couple of ballads on here that I'm not a big fan of, which is probably the only thing weighing it down.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. I'm curious to hear what those ballads are because the ballads it's in the ELO.
I should have written them down. It's you know the one that comes after Yours Truly 2095?
Take It to the Moon. Yeah, that one's okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that one kind of weighs it down. And the other one, I do like it a little bit better. But again, I came for the synthesizers and like the sonic. I love what he does, like the engineering wise.
Yeah.
Great job with this. I gotta listen to this one more though. I think that's the only thing because I've only listened to it once in my entire life. So
yeah, it was definitely a grower for me. Like the first time I listened to it, only a few tracks really clicked with me. And now I like pretty much the whole thing. I would, for the most part. So
yeah, for this to be number 5 off one listen, I wouldn't be shocked if he did this again in 5 years and it's number. I'm looking at my list. Maybe number 1.
Yeah.
I could see it grow. It's definitely a grower. It's similar to a lot of those like sonically heavy albums with like what's going on, like the heavily textured albums like this. I feel like you do need to listen to them more than once. Other albums that come to mind, the obvious one is the Stone Roses by the Stone Roses. But also like Quadrophenia by the Who, Love You comes to mind too. Those are albums you need to listen to more than once to really take in everything that's happening at once, because you can only pay attention to so many things during a 2-minute song. But I'm sure you're going to talk about Time pretty soon. So
yeah, pretty soon. Yeah. All right. So at number 5, the 5th album on my ranking, we have Face the Music from 1975. So this is a really strong and consistent album with a lot of really amazing songs. This is also the first album to feature bassist Kelly Grocott, who also sings lead on a couple of these tracks and did a lot of backing vocals for the band over the years. I would also consider this to be the first kind of commercial ELO album where the songs were all pretty like accessible and pop sounding. But I don't think that that's a bad thing at all because the material on here, like I said, is really strong. It opens with Fire on High, which is a really awesome instrumental. I love the synthesizer and the guitar on this, as well as the choir backing vocals. I think it's just a really cool track, and I love the intensity of it. Waterfall is a really pretty ballad with some really nice slide guitar. Again, reminds me of George Harrison a bit, and I think that that's a pretty underrated track. Evil Woman was one of the 2 big hits from this album, and for good reason. It's just super catchy and fun. I love the piano riff, and I love that awesome little clavinet riff after the chorus as well. The lyrics are really fun in this one as well. And it's just an awesome song. It's amazing to me that Jeff originally intended for this to just be album filler. He said that like he was just writing a song to fill time on the album, and it ended up being one of the best songs in the entire band's catalog. So a really great track there. Night Rider is a really cool track. I love the verse melody, and I love how it transitions into that really intense chorus. I think the production is really great on this one as well, and I love the use of the synthesizer and the strings. Poker is a really awesome and energetic rocker that's honestly very like proto-punk sounding to me. I love the loud guitar on it and the synthesizer parts, and I think that Kelly Grocott sings a really great lead vocal on this as well. One of those songs that I think nobody really knows outside of the ELO fan base, but I really do think it's a really strong track, and I think it sounds ahead of its time for sure, considering this album came out in 1975. Strange Magic, the other big single from this album. I think that that's another really amazing track. One of my favorite ELO songs. I love the dreamy sound of the guitar and the ascending strings during the chorus. It's just an amazing song. Down Hometown is definitely the weakest track on this album. It has kind of a country like folk vibe to it, and Jeff's kind of singing it that way too. It's interesting to hear a different style from ELO, but I don't think it's just the strongest song musically. I don't skip it when I listen to the album, but it's also not one I would ever choose to put on by itself. It's just kind of there. But then the album rebounds and closes really strongly with One Summer Dream. Honestly, this is one of my favorite ELO songs. I think it's just beautiful. I love the string arrangement, the melancholic lyrics. Jeff's vocals on this are some of his best ever. I just think this is a really gorgeous song, really moving, and it's one of the most underrated songs in the band's catalog, in my opinion. So I think it's a great way to close the album. Overall, Face the Music, it's a really strong and consistent album. I think it's also one of ELO's most accessible records. So if you're looking to get into the band, I think that this is a good one to start with for sure. I think that from start to finish, very consistent album with a lot of really great highlights. So that is the 5th album on my ranking.
All right, at number 4, I have what used to be my number 1, Discovery. I think I forgot exactly who said it because I mean ELO has a lot of like people come in and out of the band. But somebody said that it should have been called Disco Very. Very fitting, but at the same time, I'm really glad that Jeff finally embraced his pop side because I'll be honest, and I said I'd get to this. I think ELO is very much a prog band, whether you want to call them prog pop or prog rock is whatever, but they were very much a prog band up until this album when they fully embraced the pop side of his songwriting. And that being said, I think it's very strong. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with like it's probably I'd probably say this is their most accessible album in terms of music. Maybe not the most like definitive, but like when you have songs like Shine a Little Love and Last Train to London and Don't Bring Me Down, it's like this is very much just 70s pop, but that is not a bad thing. Don't Bring Me Down is probably their best rocker next to Duia. I think it's just like I heard it earlier today. It's just a very like late 70s disco-esque rocker. But Last Train to London has maybe the greatest bass line I've ever heard. It's so fucking cool. Shine a Little Love is like disco, like Last Train to London, but like 2 steps down. But that chorus of Shine a Little Love, that's very like what's that band that did Saturday Night Fever? The Bee Gees. It's very like Bee Gees-esque. I just think this is a very strong pop album. And then you get to some of the ballads on here. I actually am a big fan of Midnight Blue. It reminds me a lot of Dennis Wilson's ballads. Just with like a couple of Jeff Lynne touches. What's that last song? And Wishing actually took me by surprise. That's one I used to kind of ignore, but then I listened to it again and just sonically a very great song. I think this album is very cohesive, very great. It's just missing another 10 out of 10 song that the next 3 all have. I think this is arguably next to a couple other ones, the most accessible ELO album.
Yeah, I think that's a fair opinion, honestly. I think a lot of the songs on here, like Don't Bring Me Down, like you said, and Last Train to London, those are really catchy and fun, upbeat songs that I feel like everybody would enjoy. So, and like you said, the ballads are really strong on here as well. So
Confusion also has a Bee Gees chorus. It's like, Confusion.
Yeah.
I love this album. The hooks on this album, I'm going to say it now. I mean, I feel like you and I both have this album much higher on our ranking. Honestly, this album is kind of like a poppier sequel to Out of the Blue, with not just like in terms of like album covers because they're basically the same, just like one with the guy looking over at Out of the Blue, but it's just like the songwriting is catchy and hook based but also a little bit more disco-y. And if you started ELO with this album, you'd be wrong to do so, but it also wouldn't be a huge mistake because it's very hooky and it's very digestible for a new fan of this band.
Yeah. It's definitely not an album that would like scare you away from them listening to it. You would think, oh, this is really catchy and fun. I want to hear more. So yeah, I agree. All right. So number 4 on my ranking, El Dorado from 1974. So in my opinion, this was the first really great ELO album. I think the first 3 all had moments, especially on the third day. I think that was a pretty strong effort. But musically, I think that this is the first one that's super strong from start to finish. I think the songwriting and production throughout this album is really great. And with it being sort of a concept album, I think the songs really flow together really well, which I think Riley already mentioned. This is also the first ELO album to feature a full orchestra playing on it. And I think that really enhances the album and benefits a lot of the songs. I really love the symphonic sound throughout this album. It opens really strongly with El Dorado Overture, which is a really pretty instrumental that really kind of builds in intensity. And then that transitions beautifully into Can't Get It Out of My Head, which, like Riley said, is a gorgeous ballad, one of the best songs in the ELO catalog. The piano and strings on this song are really beautiful. I love Jeff's vocal as well. Just an amazing track. The next song, Boy Blue, has a really cool intro with strings, horns, and piano. And then it launches into that really cool guitar riff and a really catchy melody from Jeff as well. So I think that's a really great song. And then following that, you have two more really great tracks, Laredo Tornado and Poor Boy. Laredo Tornado has a really awesome guitar riff and some really amazing vocals from Jeff. I really love his falsetto on this one, especially like on that chorus. I think he sounds amazing. And Poor Boy is a really upbeat and fun track. It's very melodic and has some great strings on it, as usual from ELO. Mr. Kingdom, which Riley already mentioned, is a really cool track. I know that the verse melody is a bit similar to Across the Universe by the Beatles. You can definitely hear that, but I think that the arrangement of this song with the strings and keyboard is so pretty that I don't really care that it sounds a little bit alike. I just think it's a beautiful track. I also really like that cool synth effect that plays between the verse and the chorus. I think that that's a really cool sound. Nobody's Child is a cool kind of bluesy track. I like the piano on this one, and it has some pretty fun lyrics. Illusions in G major, solid rocker, has a lot of energy. I like the fuzzy guitar tone on it. I think the guitar sounds really cool on this one. As a song, it's okay. It's probably one of the weaker ones on here, but I do think it's a decent rocker. And then the album closes very strongly with the title track El Dorado, which I think is just beautiful. It's one of my favorite ELO songs. I love pretty much everything about this song. I love the melody. I love the string arrangement, the lyrics, and Jeff's vocal. I just think it's a masterpiece of a song. And then the record officially ends with the El Dorado finale, which is another intense and epic sounding instrumental. So overall, I think El Dorado, really great album from start to finish. I do think, like Riley mentioned, that some of the songs here definitely work better in the context of the album than they do by themselves. But I do feel that you could say that for a lot of other concept albums as well. So I can't recommend this one enough if you haven't heard it before. I know a lot of ELO fans. This ranks among a lot of people's top fives for ELO albums. But again, if you're not a fan of the band, you probably aren't really familiar with this one outside of Can't Get It Out of My Head. So definitely would recommend it, especially, again, if you're into kind of that like symphonic kind of prog sound. So a really strong album, number 4 on my list.
I might disagree with you on that one, though. Concept albums, I mean, at least the ones I like, there's not a lot of them are the songs kind of like blend together. They blend together, but like there's also a lot of like different song, like a lot of the songs sound a little different. Like the first one that comes to mind is The Wall. There's a lot of actually there's some songs that, but it's like you have songs like Comfortably Numb, we got the slow rocker, and then you have also like Run Like Hell, which is quite the opposite. But I mean, I feel like with a band like ELO, where their main target is like hitting the orchestration, I feel like that's kind of to be expected. So I don't know. Maybe cut that out. I don't know.
And I will say, like, there are plenty of songs in here that I do like by themselves. Like, Can't Get It Out of My Head obviously works great by itself. I think Boy Blue is great by itself. Laredo Tornado is great by itself. But I just think, like, in general, some of these songs are definitely, they come off as stronger, I think, when you listen to them in sequence, basically.
All right. Top 3. My number, right. This is really hard for me. Like
I agree.
These next 3 are very hard for me. But I mean, especially these next 2, I can't really rank because I don't want to say I have like a 2A and 2B, but that's exactly what I'm saying, because one of these is I'm not going to say anything. I will say my number 3 is Face the Music. This one is, in my opinion, minus my number 1, one of the most cohesive albums I've ever heard. Not just in the sense that the songs flow together well, but like the general like rise and fall of each song, where like you'll have one awesome epic and then you have like a slow ballad. And let's just run through each track. Fire on High is a killer opener. I was a little scared at first because it sounds super chaotic, but then it goes right in blasting with the instrumental. Absolutely love it. Waterfall, I absolutely love. Gorgeous, gorgeous song. If the Stone Roses didn't have a song called Waterfall that I absolutely love, this would be the best song ever written, called Waterfall. Not much competition, but I still loved it. Evil Woman, I know you said that like Jeff wrote this like by accident. One of my favorite songs from the band, period. It has such a nerdy but like awesome like I don't want to say punk energy, but like that's kind of what it is almost. It's not a punk song, but it has the same energy that something that the Sex Pistols would do. It's just like now it's like by ELO. I absolutely love it. And then the little guitar riff after the chorus, evil woman,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Like Jeff really knew how to arrange songs. The energy on this one is absolutely killer. And Knight Rider also surprised me because I used to not really like that one, but another awesome song. Poker is probably the weakest one on here. I still think it's really good though. I love the energy it brings. But then you have my favorite song by the band, period, Strange Magic. This is one I absolutely love. I love the little smooth guitar line. It reminds me of Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton, except done way better. The chorus is super memorable. The strange magic.
Yeah.
I can go on and on about that song, but I don't want to take up too much time. I kind of lied with Poker because Town Hometown is probably the weakest one on here. I appreciate the approach, but similarly to Wild West Hero from Out of the Blue, I don't really care for it. I know, Jake, I know you like that one.
I used to not.
You see, so maybe it'll grow on me. Both of these. I appreciate the approach, but I feel like on an album like this, it's a little not really needed. You have so many consistent songs, and out of nowhere, you have a ballad of Billy the Kid, except done by Jeff Lynne. That being said, I do appreciate the approach, and it's still about a 7 out of 10. And then it closes absolutely incredibly with One Summer Dream. Incredible ballad. Maybe one of Jeff Lynne's best ballads that he's ever done. That being said, what I really like about this one more than the other two on here is there's a lot of variety with the styles of songs that he's doing. And that's why I said, even though it's maybe not my favorite on the album, in fact, I think it's the worst, I still really appreciate Down Hometown because there's a lot of variety on here with the styles. Fire on High, Evil Woman, Strange Magic, and Down Hometown all have different like stylistic approaches to them, but they're still inherently ELO songs, which I really appreciate. But the flow of this album is, I would argue, unmatched by any other ELO album, even more than the ones I have ahead of it. That's why I said it's super hard to rank because it really depends what I want from an ELO album. But the cohesion on this one is probably unmatched, and it has my favorite song by ELO. So
yeah, Strange Magic was one of that might have been like my original favorite ELO song. I just remember always loving that one. Always, whenever it comes on the radio, always listen to it. It's a great song. I love that slide guitar, which I think Richard Tandy played the guitar on that one. So, all right, so coming in at number 3 for me, this is an album that Riley ranked quite a bit lower on his ranking, A New World Record from 1976. So in my opinion, this is a very strong album from start to finish. I think it has some of the best songs ELO ever did. In terms of songwriting, I think Jeff's really at the top of his game here, as well as for the production. I think this album just sounds really great sonically. And you can see why this album was the band's global breakthrough. The opening track on here, Tightrope, is one of my all-time favorite ELO songs. Like Riley mentioned, I love that intense opening with the strings and then the catchy melody. That is such a catchy chorus that this song has. And I just love it. I love the guitar as well. Telephone Line is an incredible song, one of my favorite ELO ballads. Beautiful melody. I love Jeff's lyrics on this one too. And I can see why this was a huge hit. It's an incredible track. Rock Aria is a strong rocker with some cool opera vocals, which I like. And it has a pretty gritty lead vocal from Jeff. I don't think it's quite as strong as the first 2 tracks on the album, but it's still an enjoyable rocker for me. Mission, A World Record. I used to not be too crazy about this song, but it has grown on me a lot over the past year or so. I really like the string arrangement on this one, and I like the guitar after the chorus too. I think that's really beautiful, that little guitar solo. And it's just a great vocal from Jeff as well. So Fine is a really fun and upbeat song with kind of a funkier sound to it. I really like the guitar playing on this one. It also has this really cool middle section with some really neat Moog synthesizer effects. I don't know if you remember that, Riley, from this song, So Fine, but I feel like you would like that. It's very like...
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I know I kind of glossed over those middle tracks, but there's obviously... It wouldn't have ranked... It's like somewhere in the middle of my ranking, and it wouldn't have been that high if there weren't memorable hooks.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, So Fine, really great song. I really like the chorus too, like that. So Fine. I think that's really good. Living Thing, another one of ELO's most popular songs, and I think deservedly so, because I think it's an amazing song. Really great melody. I love the way that the strings are incorporated into this one too, like with that cool string opening at the beginning. It's just another one of the band's best tracks, in my opinion. Above the Clouds, this is another track that's really been growing on me lately. I used to not really care for it, but I do appreciate kind of the melancholic vibe of it. And I do think the strings are really great on this as well. So it's definitely growing on me. Do Ya? This one might surprise some people, including Riley, but this is actually my least favorite song on the album. Um, I know that this song was originally recorded by Jeff's original band, The Move. But I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But personally, like this rocker just does not click with me in the way a lot of Jeff's other rock songs do. I'm not crazy about the chorus, like the do you want my I'm not really that nuts about the chorus. And I think production wise, the song could have been a little better too. I think it's fine. I still listen to it. It's on my ELO playlist, but it's not a favorite of mine. And I think Jeff has done better rockers. And then the album closes really strongly with Shangri-La. This is an absolutely beautiful song. One of my favorite ELO deep cuts. I love the melody on this. I love that little guitar solo in the middle. And the outro of this song is also just incredible. I love how it kind of like builds in intensity at the end. And Jeff's vocals as it fades out, like the I will return, like that's just really, really great. So I also love that faded like the Beatles on Hey Jude line as well. I like how Jeff just kind of worked that in there. I think that's kind of fun. So overall, I think that A New World Record is a really fantastic album. I think it's one of the band's very best. And I think that I think a lot of people consider it one of their best, and I would agree with them. I think it's a really strong record. So that's number 3 on my list, A New World Record.
I know it was at number 8, but if that being said, I think I was pretty clear, and I really hope I got that point across, that there's that's like some of Jeff Lynne's best songwriting mixed, in my opinion, with like some of his not necessarily worst, because that's Secret Messages, but like some of his weakest in the sense that he's not really giving his all on some of those. I feel like a lot of the energy was put into those really good ones, and the other ones like Above the Clouds and So Fine. It's just like, I know you love those, but I mean, I didn't really click with me so much. But that being said, none of them are bad. It's just pretty unmemorable, which is not what I want from ELO. Also, I'm kind of the opposite on you. I love Do You, but I do not really care for Rakaria at all.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I feel like that was just kind of like a generic rocker. Although that being said, it's way better than Rock and Roll is King. So
I really like Jeff's vocal on Rock Aria. I think he really like sings the hell out of it, and I do like the guitar too. I like that cool, like really like heavy guitar tone on it. So
I do like the hook of "Really Gonna Rock Tonight," but other than that, it's just
really gonna rock tonight. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, other than that, it's just like, eh. All right, number 2. I think you're not gonna be shocked what I picked at number 2. You're gonna be shocked at what I picked at number 1 because number 2 is Out of the Blue.
I'm not shocked at your number 1. I know what it is, and I'm not shocked at all, actually. So
all right. So like I said though, these top 3 are really hard to rank because on one hand you have what I consider the most cohesive album by the band, and another you have what is quite easily the best string of songs ever written and put together on an album. Although my number 1 criticism of this before I get to the good things is there is so much good material on here that it kind of starts to sound the same about halfway through. If you take out the songs individually, I will love them. But like if you go from Turn to Stone to It's Over to Sweet Talking One to Across the Border, and literally every song on here is good, some of them start to dwindle about halfway through, especially when you get to a double album. Also, I think that the Rainy Day Suite, Songs for Rainy Day, or Concert for Rainy Day, I forgot what he called it.
Yeah,
I was my expectations were super high, and I will say that is probably the weakest part of the album for me.
Oh, I strongly disagree with that.
I know you will. That being said, Mr. Blue Sky is my second favorite song by ELO next to Strange Magic, and then like the rest after that just follows. That being said, this is still my number 2 favorite ELO album. I think that the songwriting on here is absolutely incredible. It's just most of the songs have a similar flow to them, where then one comes after the other. I kind of get bored. It's like I want something different. I want like a ballad and then like a heavy rocker. And on here, I feel like they kind of share the same tempo. That being said, my favorite songs on here is pretty much all of them. Turn to Stone, Sweet Talking Woman, Across the Border, Starlight, Mr. Blue Sky, The Whale. I will talk about The Whale. Those are some of my favorite songs, period. It's just the flow is kind of ruined when it's just like mid tempo after mid tempo after mid tempo after mid tempo. It kind of starts to sound samey, which is a common criticism for me with me in the band. But that being said, the songwriting on here is absolutely incredible. The production on here is absolutely incredible. The engine, everything is great. It's just it kind of has a straight line in terms of flow. But the hooks on here, like some of the most memorable hooks I've ever heard. Turn to stone, when you were home, I'll turn to stone. And then sweet, sweet talk, where did you go? Like the whole sweet talk moment, it's so fucking cool. That is what I consider a Jeff Lynne rocker compared to a song like Rockaria or Do Ya. Even though I like Do Ya, it's like this is what I expect from a Jeff Lynne rocker, where it's not outright rock and roll. The only songs I can safely say I just not a big fan of are Birmingham Blues and Wild West Hero, but those come at the very end, and I can just like take the needle off the record and just call it a day. Um, the Whale, though, oh my god, I was absolutely blown away when I first heard this because this is one I always just skipped. Maybe it's just because I really like the Brian Wilson instrumentals that this one's finally clicked with me, but it's so beautiful. I honestly would put it on par with Pet Sounds and probably not Let's Go Away for a while, but definitely on par with Pet Sounds in terms of how much I like that. And if you know me, I really like the Pet Sounds instrumental. So absolutely beautiful, but sonically it's just so pleasing to hear. And then it's so melodic. I love it. And the gatefold on this album is absolutely incredible. Oh my God. But I love this album. I just wish that the flow was a little bit better. I don't think it's from a songwriting thing. I honestly think that if you just rearrange some of the songs on the album, I would probably put this at number one. But it's not. But still love it. Fantastic album. One of the all-time great albums ever made. It's just there's one more by ELO that I like a little bit better.
What are your thoughts on Jungle?
That was one of my weaker checks.
Chuka chuka ooh. It grew on me. It's fun. I don't really listen to it much, but it's fun.
And for Wild West Hero, it's the same criticism I have from
Down Hometown.
Down Hometown. It's just I appreciate the approach in terms of, like, I feel like he's writing more about it rather than putting it into the actual song itself. But like, if there were different lyrics, I might like it a little bit better. At the same time, though, it's at the very end of the album, and like I said, after a while, the songs got so samey. Even though they're all individually fantastic songs, it's just like I kind of got a little bit tired of the album. I'm like, it's like how would I put this? It's like it's probably the same way you'd feel about Tommy by The Who. It's where like you'll like the individual songs, but when you put it together, after a while, it's like, oh my God, we get it. It's like I think it's more of an individual taste thing where like you can appreciate an album full of all those songs together, but when it comes to maybe something like The Who, where it's like, I think you get what I'm trying to say.
I do. Yeah. And I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from. For me, there is enough variety between the songs where I do really can just completely enjoy listening to it from start to finish. I do think there's a really good variety, but I can kind of see what you mean with the more mid-tempo songs. But yeah, I'll talk more about that album when I get to it. So,
and quickly, I also listened to this one after consecutively listening to Face the Music, New World Record, and I think Eldorado. It's like I was listening to all ELO all day, and then I got to this album, and it's just like, all right, Jeff, I know you can write a great melodic song. I get it. Which is why when I listened to it, just not Discovery, Time was just such a breath of fresh air for me. It's like, it's still my number 2 favorite ELO album. And it's still probably like on my top 100 albums list. So like, yeah, I do like it. Don't worry.
Yeah. I think for me, like the reason I do like enjoy these albums as a whole, it's like he checks the boxes for me. Like I really like melodic, often Beatlesque songwriting and what that's really well produced and arranged, and like really he checks the boxes on like pretty much all of the songs on a lot of these albums. So like I think that's why, like you said, it's a taste thing. I could listen to that album and not get bored, but then I could listen to like you mentioned Tommy or whatever the album was you mentioned and be like, okay, I get it, like you said. So just a taste thing, I think.
Yeah, that being said, I think last thing, and I'll let you get to your number 2. If you like cherry picked like 5 songs from this, I could listen to them and be very happy. It's
Yeah.
just like when you put it together in an hour, 10-hour, 20-minute block, it's like, all right, I want something now. All right.
All right. So at number two for me, I'm going with Time from 1981. So in my opinion, this was ELO's last great album. It was released at a time when the music was really changing. I know disco was really on its way out by this point, and a lot of new wave acts were really popular around this time. And I think that this album is kind of reflective of that change. It's even more synth heavy than a lot of ELO's previous albums. And also, it's a concept album. It has very futuristic themes and lyrics, which I think is also in line with some of the new wave artists of the time. But for me, though, what makes this album so great, it's just the amazing songwriting and production on here from Jeff. I think pretty much every track on here just sounds incredible. And it's an album that I really do enjoy from start to finish. In terms of the highlights, the album opens with Prologue, which is a short instrumental. And then it launches into Twilight, which is one of my all-time favorite ELO songs. I think this is an incredible track. I love the melody. I think it's amazing. The synth work on here is awesome as well. I also really love that little piano solo halfway through this track. I think that's really awesome. And yeah, this song just really rocks. I think it's a great way to start the album. Yours truly, 2095, another really great synth heavy track. I know Riley mentioned this one already. I think the lyrics are kind of fun on this one. It's like they're about like dating a robot girlfriend in the future and wanting to return back to the present, which is kind of like the theme of this whole album. It's about a guy that time traveled into the future and basically wants to go back home. But yeah, a really cool track there. Ticket to the Moon, pretty ballad, I think. Has some nice piano, and the chorus is really effective, I think. But it's not my favorite ELO ballad, I will say. But it's all right. Rain is Falling is one of my favorite ELO ballads. I think the melody is really pretty on this, and I love the melancholic lyrics. It's another underrated song, one of those ones that only ELO fans are going to know, but I think it's just really beautiful. From the End of the World is a really cool track. I like how this one kind of builds in intensity as it goes. I think the production on this one is especially great. I think it's one of the best sounding songs on the album. And I really love Jeff's falsetto at the end as well. Like that, From the End of the World. I really like that a lot. So really strong song. Here Is the News is another really synth heavy song. This one took a while to grow on me, but I really do like it now. I really like the sound of it. Kind of similar to Yours Truly 2095 with the synths, but I think it's really effective. It also has a fun music video if you've ever seen that on YouTube. That's pretty entertaining to watch. 21st Century Man. This is another one of my favorite ELO ballads. I love the melody on this. It's very like Beatlesque, and I think it's really pretty. The guitar solo in the middle is just incredible as well. Just really beautiful sound. And I really like the lyrics and the backing vocals on this song as well. It's amazing, and I would probably put it in my top 20 or top 15 ELO songs. And then the album closes with Hold On Tight, which, like Riley mentioned, it's another kind of Jeff Lynne rock and roll song, kind of like 50s inspired. But unlike Rock and Roll and King, I think this one actually sounds really energetic, and the production I think is much stronger as well. Like on Rock and Roll and King, Rock and Roll is King. He kind of sounds like he's on cruise control, like just write a rock. Whereas this one, he really like put effort into it with the production. I love the effects on this, and I really like that little catchy part in the melody, like the "When you get so down but you can't get up." I really like that a lot. I get stuck in my head all the time. And I think it's a strong way to close the album, even though it might be a little bit out of place compared to some of the other tracks. So lastly, I also wanted to shout out an outtake from this album. When Time Stood Still, I think is a really pretty ballad. I think that should have made the album over a few of the other tracks, in my opinion. There are a couple tracks on here I don't come back to too often. The Way Life's Meant to Be, I think, is just okay. It kind of has that same melody from Heroes and Villains by the Beach Boys.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Across the Border as well. But I actually prefer both of those songs over this song. I think it's just okay. And then The Lights Go Down is all right. Like you said, Riley, it sounds like The Tide is High, kind of. I think it's all right. Decent melody, but I don't come back to it too often. And then Another Heartbreaks. It's a cool instrumental, but I only really listen to it in the context of the album. But yeah, overall, Time, really strong album. It seems to be one that only ELO fans really know. Like outside of the ELO fan base, this isn't really a well-known album. But I think it deserves a lot more recognition. I think it's really great from start to finish, and I think it's one of the best sounding ELO albums. So that's number 2 on my list, Time from 1981.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I knew it reminded me of Heroes and Villains, and I was like on the car right back from where I was before. I'm like, I gotta make sure I say that. I gotta make sure that I say that, and I forgot.
Yeah.
So, all right, this last one, I was kind of scared to put it at number one, but on the
I
car
respect.
ride back, this is what I listened to. For the second time, I have On the Third Day from 1973. This, like, when I think I remember I said, like, I love it when Jeff Lynne surprises me. When I listen to this for the first time, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't realize how good this album actually is.
I do. I
Um, and then listen, I knew, I know you're so excited.
knew
You
you
knew
were
I
gonna.
was. And then I on the way back from I was getting dinner. On the way back, I was like, well, I want to go over some of the albums that I kind of want to have like second thoughts on. And then I started this one, and I did not stop until I finished it. On the way back, I was sitting in the car for like an extra 10 minutes to make sure that I could listen through it. It's everything I could want from an ELO album is in this album. It is proggy where I want it to be proggy. It has synthesizer stuff where I want there to be synthesizer stuff, and then there is guitar, I want guitar, and all throughout it's super hooky. Bluebird is Dead is incredible ballad. Showdown is like one of the grooviest songs I've ever heard, and I didn't expect it like a groovy song to have orchestration in the back, but it fits so perfectly. Oh no, not Susan sounds like it could have been written by Elton John, but it has Jeff Lynne
Yeah.
production. Dreaming of 4000, you hit the nail on the head. This is a super proggy song, but honestly, the highlight for me is Daybreaker, the instrumental. That thing absolutely fucking rocked. And then when I listened to this for the first time, I had to make sure I didn't say anything to Jake because I knew he'd be like, oh, like he is now. It's just, and the thing is, I was expecting there. I was like, after each song, I was like, there's got to be a miss somewhere in this album, and the miss came in the very last song in the Hall of the Mountain King. But that being said, I think the reason I don't like this one so much is because the Who did it better.
Oh,
The Who have covered in the Hall of the Mountain King, and it's like one of the most killer track. Like you don't think that song would work, but then you hear the Who do it, and it's like, all right. And I honestly think I would have really appreciated it by ELO a little bit more if I didn't know about that Who version. Um, but similar to like most people with Bull Sessions, you can just take the needle off if you don't like it. That I do like it though. I just think that Out of the Blue and Face the Music, I might like have highlights from or that I like better than this. And Face the Music is like way more maybe as cohesive as this one, but like this one has every small element that I could want from Jeff Lynne. The progginess of the early albums, the poppiness and the synthesizers of the later stuff, and the melodic nature of all of them just put together. It's just everything I want put together, and I absolutely love this album. It came out of left field. I did not expect myself to like it as much as I did, but when I did the ranking, I'm like, I gotta put this at number one because it's everything I could want from him. And Daybreaker just fucking rips. Oh my god.
yeah, that's an awesome song. I love the way like it starts out with that really cool synthesizer, and then it has that beautiful string part, like that. It's like it's such a cool track.
Yeah, a lot of these songs, it's like it's weird that I don't think it's shocking to you that the instrumental is my favorite song from this album, but it's kind of shocking to me because the ballads on here are so beautiful. Bluebird is Dead is incredible, and Oh No Not Susan back to back, by the way. First of all, I forgot to mention the way that those songs just connect. Super cool. But it's I was like, oh, is this gonna be like a ballad heavy album? And then I got some of the other ones, and then Showdown, of course. Just the songwriting itself is super strong. Like I said, Oh No Not Susan sounds like Elton John could have written it. I was listening to like the chord progression and some of the changes. Like this could be an Elton John song, but then you hear like the string arrangements and stuff. It shows you that Jeff Lynne can take what is like a piano ballad, like one that you'd hear in a bar, and then you add string sections and then synthesizers, keyboards. It's a totally different song.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just holy crap. That I am glad I did this. I suffered through 14 albums because I think this was one of the last ones I listened to before the last ones I listened to was Debut and the two Jeff Lynne's ELO ones. But I was kind of scared for this one. I'm like, I might like it as much as ELO too, but I don't know. Is it going to be an all-time classic? And then I went through and I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. So
Yeah. No, I just knew like before we did this, when I was re-listening to that full album, I was just like, this is so gonna be up Riley's alley. Like the synthesizer sounds and just like, yeah, just all the prog elements come together so perfectly on that album. So yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's a weird mix of the early stuff they did, and then oddly enough, the stuff they did after the 70s albums.
Right. Yeah, you're right. All right, so now for my favorite ELO album, I do kind of like mix up these top 4 or 5 a lot. Like I kind of rotate them. Like I'll be like, oh, one day this is my favorite, the next day. But this one's been pretty much my top one for a while now. Out of the Blue from 1977, as Riley's holding up.
I knew
So,
it.
yeah. So not only is this my favorite ELO album, but this is one of my favorite double albums of all time. It's right up there with the White Album and All Things Must Pass for me. Honestly, I don't know what more I can say about it that hasn't been said already. It's just amazing songwriting and production from Jeff. And it's amazing to me that he wrote all this material in less than a month. Like that's just crazy. Like this full album was written in literally a few weeks. So, but it's really strong from start to finish. It opens up with 4 really incredible songs on side 1. Turn to Stone, It's Over, Sweet Talking Woman, and Across the Border. I absolutely love all of these, especially Turn to Stone, which is my all-time favorite ELO song. I love everything about that song. I love the melody. I love the string arrangement, the synthesizer, the lyrics. I think it's just a flawless song, and I think it's one of the best album openers ever. It's Over is also one of my favorite ELO deep cuts. I really like the strings on this one. I think they really blend well with like kind of like the melancholic lyrics. I think it's a really moving track. I think it's a good follow-up to Turn to Stone. Side 2 opens with Night in the City and Starlight, which are 2 really great tracks. I really love Starlight a lot. It has a very kind of like soulful sound to it, which I really like. And I love the little synth effects on it as well. And side 2 also closes really strongly with Steppin' Out, which is a beautiful ballad, has a really great melody. And then on side 3, you have the Concerto for a Rainy Day, which consists of 4 awesome tracks. Standing in the Rain is a really awesome track with some cool strings and synthesizer. I can see why the band opened their concerts with that song in the late 70s. I think it's a really cool sounding track. And then that leads really beautifully into Big Wheels, which is one of my favorite ELO ballads. I think that this song is like beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. I think the lyrics are very moving, and I think it's just a beautiful track. And then following that, you have Summer and Lightning, which is another really strong track with a great melody. And then, of course, Mr. Blue Sky, which is just a perfect song. So side 3 is really strong. And then side 4 also opens really strongly with Sweet as the Night, which is another one of my favorite ELO deep cuts. I love the melody of this, and I really like how the lead vocal alternates between Jeff Lynne and Kelly Grocott. I think they both do a really good job at the lead on this. The Whale is a very unique sounding instrumental. There's parts of it that I like, but unfortunately, I can't really say I enjoy it as a whole. I know Riley likes this one quite a bit, but honestly, it's the one song in the album I could do without. I don't really listen to it. And then the album closes with Birmingham Blues, which is a decent rocker. Nothing too spectacular, but it's okay. And then Wild West Hero, which, as I mentioned, is a song that I remember I used to not care for at all. Like, I was kind of like Riley. I was like, I'll just stop the album once I get to this one. But it has really grown on me over the past couple of years. And now I actually do like genuinely like it a lot. I like the Western style piano on it. And I think that the verses are very moving. And I just think it's a strong way to close the album. I think it's a really pretty ballad. I think it's it kind of captures that Western sound very well, I feel, in a way that like Down Hometown doesn't. So I think that's a strong closer. And overall, I think Out of the Blue, I think it's just a masterpiece of an album. I think it's one of the greatest records to come out of the 70s. And if I could only listen to one ELO album, this would probably be the one that I would choose, just because I think there's a great variety of tracks on here. You have some really great up-tempo songs like Turn to Stone, Sweet Talking Woman. But then you have some beautiful ballads too, like It's Over, Starlight, Steppin' Out. So I think start to finish, really consistent, really enjoyable, and it's one of my favorite records of all time. So that is my number 1 ELO record.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna pick that one. Didn't you talk about it in our top 10 albums list?
I did, yeah. I did a little bit.
Yeah. So I knew you were gonna pick that one. Yeah, I feel like I need to listen to it again outside of the context of listening to every single ELO album on repeat for like the past week.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll beat it on the third day, just because like I said, there's like some spots that I think it kind of falls a little bit weak. And after a while, I kind of get a little tired of Jeff Lynne's super melodic nature. That being said, it is an all-time classic album. I don't think I mentioned it. I'm not actually a huge fan of Steppin' Out. That's one of the weaker tracks for me. That one, Wild West Hero, and probably The Jungle. I do think it's the best out of those 3, but it's just like, I feel like Starlight was way better, and then Steppin' Out, you kind of get a little repetitive there. But that being said, if you said as one of your favorites, I would not knock you for it, because like I said, each of these songs you could probably cherry pick, and I'd probably enjoy all of them. I definitely need to re-listen to a concert for a rainy day though, because
Yeah, I feel like you would. I feel like based on the stuff you like on the third day, I feel like Standing in the Rain is like right up your alley. So I'm a little surprised if you don't, if you're not too.
I wasn't listening to it in the I was listening to it like as a whole, and it just went straight from stepping out to standing in the rain. And I was
Oh,
kind of sick of stepping out, and then it's like standing in the rain's like right after.
yeah, I think
So
Standing really cool, really great, like instrumental, even though there are some vocals on it. So
I need to re-listen to it, but it definitely deserves its status. It's just a little too much of Jeff Lynne at once. But I don't know. Maybe again, I was just getting sick of Jeff Lynne's music, even though I think it's all good. When you listen to 14 albums by him, you get so tired of it. That's why I was like, "Are we doing armchair theater?" You're
I,
like, "No,
I don't get tired of it, but again, different taste.
no." I feel like I similar taste in songs, but whole album of it, I don't know. I need to re-listen to it. But that
Yeah.
being said, I don't think On the Third Day is getting touched because that I loved that one way more than I thought I would. And maybe it's because my expectations were low. I don't know.
I do feel like we have the same like favorite songs on there too, because you really like Dreaming of 4000 and Daybreaker, and those are like both in my top 4 or 5 on
I
there.
feel like when we do our, I'm not ranking any of these except the top three songs, but when we get actually my top four songs, when we rank them, I feel like we're gonna have minus two songs. I think we're just gonna have the same list.
All right, so do we want to get into our top 10 ELO songs or top 10 approximately ELO songs?
Yeah, I'm gonna go rapid fire.
All right.
Number 10, Evil Woman. Number 9 is Yours Truly, 2095. Number 8 is The Whale. Number 7 is Daybreaker. Number 6 is Telephone Line. Number 5 is Last Train to London. And then my top four are set in that order. Sweet Talking Woman at number 4. Turns to Stone at number 3. Mr. Blue Sky at number 2. And then Strange Magic at number 1. So I do have quite a bit of Out of the Blue.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would argue with that. That's a really strong top 10 for sure. All those songs are like fan favorites, I feel like. So all right, so for me, so mine was kind of interesting because usually I wouldn't try to do something like this, like trying to rank these songs, just because it's like I have such a hard time like coming up with like deciding like what do I prefer. But a while ago I did do this site where you could rank the ELO songs, where it would match them up, and then it would give you a full ranking. So this is pretty much what I got for like my top 10 doing that site. So at number 10, I got It's Over from Out of the Blue, which I think is a really beautiful ballad. Number 9, Evil Woman, which was also in Riley's top 10. Number 8, Telephone Line. Number 7, Starlight. Number 6, Shangri-La. Number 5, El Dorado. 4, One Summer Dream. And then my top 3 are Tightrope, Twilight, and Turn to Stone. So they're all T's. And then the songs that just missed my top 10, Mr. Blue Sky was right there at number 11. I would probably bump that in if I were to redo that. Last Train to London, 12. Rain is Falling, 13. 21st Century Man, 14. And Big Wheels at 15. So, yeah, there's just a lot of really strong material in the catalog. So I feel like it's very hard to rank these songs. Like one day you could ask me like, oh, like what would you like? Would this song be your top 5? And then the next day I could be like, yeah, I'd rank that 20th. Like, so I just feel like it really varies when you have such great material throughout the whole catalog. So, Riley, what are your thoughts on some of the Xanadu tracks if you had a chance to listen to them?
I listened to a couple and then I turned that shit off. I told you I think the title track works better with Jeff Lynne's vocal. I feel like he writes very much for his own voice, and Olivia Newton-John does a great job, but I feel like she's almost trying to do like a Jeff Lynne impression with it. I don't really remember a lot of the other tracks besides the title one, because the title one was one I was really used to. I thought it was okay, but I kind of got tired of it pretty quickly. To be fair, when you listen to 14 albums, it gets really boring after a while. But I know the movie was a flop, and that kind of hurt their image after doing the soundtrack for it. So I was going to list like 5 other songs I really liked, too, if I can get that. Bluebird is Dead, Oh No Not Susan, One Summer Dream, Shine a Little Love, and I think that's 4, so I'll give you one more. Can't Get It Out of My Head is pretty easily one of their best songs, too.
Yeah. If anybody was curious what songs came up last on my ranking, I'm pretty sure Letter of Spain was in the bottom of 5, and I'm pretty sure that Battle of Marston Moor, whatever the hell it's called, from the debut was in there.
I kind of like that one. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, really? Yeah. And then a couple of the Secret Messages outtakes, or the tracks that didn't make the final album, were also down there, just because I think a lot of them are very annoying. So, But in terms of the Xanadu tracks, I think the title track is great. Actually, I actually think he did write it for Olivia's voice. I think it seems to fit her range very well. Like I feel like the song itself is okay, but I feel like it really like the impressive vocal from her. It really elevates it. It's just a very high range vocal, and I think she does a great job with it. And All Over the World, I think, is a really strong song as well. I would argue that's probably the stronger track of the two between all those that one and Xanadu. I think All Over the World is better. I also think I'm Alive is pretty cool. I like the synth effects on it. And The Fall and Don't Walk Away are okay. Don't Walk Away is kind of like Jeff writing, kind of like a more like generic sounding ballad. It's fine, but like it's just not up to par with some of his other ballads. And The Fall is just okay. It's catchy, but it's there. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Xanadu.
Every Little Thing from Armchair Theater is also a good song.
I believe I like that song as well. I think is that the first song on the album?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's the one. That album, last time I listened to it, it didn't do too much for me, to be honest with you. So I'll have to give it another listen. But I just know there was one song I liked, and I think it was the first song. So I'm guessing that was it.
Yeah. I that's the only one I remember from the album I imagine if I remember that one all the way back from like 6 years ago in high school, it's probably worth listening to.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, that was all the way back when I had an Android and I had like illegally download music. So
Yeah. What are some of your thoughts on some of Jeff's other collaborations with other artists? Like, do you have a favorite like album or artist that Jeff collaborated with?
George Harrison, Cloud Nine. Killer album cover. And Traveling Wilburys is a pretty easy one. I definitely prefer Volume 1 over Volume 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much of that he actually wrote though, but I do know that he produced them. I'm trying to think of what else he's done.
Full Moon Fever, Tom Petty. He produced and co-wrote a lot of those songs. He co-wrote Free Fallin', I think, and Won't Back Down.
Did?
Yeah, he's on.
Shit, I did not know that. Yeah, it was that Full Moon Fever.
Full Moon Fever, yeah.
Yeah, I am I'm a fan of the album. I haven't listened to a lot of Tom Petty stuff in a while. I feel like that's another deep dive I have to do. I don't know if I'll do all the albums in 1 week like I did with ELO, but I mean, I feel like Tom Petty, he's another artist I'd probably like. As much as I love him, I mean, if I listened to every single one of his albums on repeat, I'd probably get sick of it after a while.
See, there I agree with you more because, like, as much as I love Tom Petty too, like in terms of listening to his full albums, like back to back to back, yeah, I feel like it does start to get a little dull for me as well. Although I do think his strongest album is really great from start to finish. I think Full Moon Fever. I think that album. The reason I like it so much is like the songwriting is really good, and I think the production from Jeff is really good. I think I mentioned on one of our other episodes, but I really love the song "A Face in the Crowd," which Jeff produced. And is on that album. I think that's a really beautiful track, and I love like the kind of the haunting sound of it. And that's mostly Jeff with the production. So that's a really beautiful track. And yeah, I think Cloud Nine's a really strong album that Jeff was involved with. Traveling Wilburys have some great stuff. And yeah, Jeff is just an amazing talent, amazing songwriter, amazing producer. And just so much great music, whether it's with ELO or with another artist. So
yeah, I know I ragged on him for being like a little like samey with a lot of his stuff, but at the same time, I feel like if I cherry pick like 5 songs from like different eras and all that, like they're all incredible songs. And the fact that he probably could do that, make them sound samey but also different, is honestly more impressive than it's like actually a really impressive thing to do. Because I feel like a lot of artists who have a similar path where like they stick to one vision with what they want to do with their music, they'll fall off really quickly. Like, I mean, I'm not to like shit on Nate, but like Jan and Dean, like even though they like shifted like themes, most of their styles were pretty much the same all throughout, and they kind of fell off pretty quickly. I mean, I know there's other like things that got in the way with Jan Berry getting seriously injured, but like a lot of those similar artists who follow like one theme, they fall off quick. Jeff Lynne managed to stick around and write incredible album after incredible album for a solid like 7 years, and even after that, still had some fantastic songs. Just something that not a lot of artists could say, especially in the 70s, when like a lot of the biggest names in music ever were at their peaks, like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd were all at their peaks, and Jeff Lynne is still cranking out tunes like Mr. Blue Sky.
Yeah.
He survived punk and new wave, which not a lot of artists can say.
And disco.
Disco, very, yeah.
Yeah. One last thing, since Jeff is on his farewell tour this year with ELO, I'm seeing him next month, which I'm really looking forward to. It'll be my first and I guess last time seeing him, so I'm excited for that. Riley, if there was one or two songs you could see Jeff play in concert, let's say deep cuts, what would you want to hear?
Daybreaker.
Daybreaker, yeah.
I would actually love to see him do that. I don't know how popular this song is, but yours truly 2095 is also incredible. I'd love to see him do that one live. I love the vocal approach to that one, and I don't know how he'd approach to doing it live. So I guess Daybreaker, yours truly 2095, and to throw one off from El Dorado, probably Mr. Kingdom. Or actually no, Mama from ELO 2. I'd want to see him do all 8 minutes.
For me, I would say pretty much anything from Time, because Jeff doesn't really seem to ever play anything from Time live, other than like when he was on the tour for Time back in like the early 80s. He has done Twilight before in concert, so I would maybe hope to get that at least. But I'd love to hear like one of the ballads, but I'm not really expecting it. I would also say if I could pick one song though, One Summer Dream from Face the Music is just beautiful. I know he did it live in like, I think it was like 2001 when he was doing that mini like Zoom tour thing. I know he did that song live, but I'd love to hear that one live. I think that's a great song. And yeah, honestly, any deep cuts, because I know most of his set list, he kind of sticks to like the hits that people know. But like for the diehard fans, it's always cool to hear like the lesser known material. Even like something like, like 10538 Overture. I would love to hear that live. That would be so
That would
sick.
be a great opener, especially for his last tour.
Yeah. And a way to like kind of acknowledge the diehard fans too. Be like, yeah, I remember you guys, so I'm looking forward to it. It should be, I'm excited to see him. So one of my favorite artists. All right. Should we wrap it up there, Riley? Or you have anything else you want to say?
No, no. I'm glad I did the deep dive. And he's one of the greatest songwriters, and honestly, one of, if not the greatest producer of all time. So what he did with his production, I think is in the early days, like I would say around 74 or not 70, like 75, and I guess even in the middle period, like 77, was something so ahead of its time. And he was doing a lot of stuff that we take for granted on a lot of modern production. Like you hear, I hate Sabrina Carpenter, but even on her newest single, you hear a lot of stuff that Jeff was doing all the way back in the 70s. So shout out him. He is really ahead of its time and freaking genius. Under one of the underrated songwriters and easily one of the underrated producers.
Yeah, I pretty much echo all of your thoughts there. I think he's one of the most talented musicians, producers, just amazing music. So, all right. So thank you everybody for listening to this third and final episode of Off Timin. We hope you all enjoyed the show. As always, I had a great time talking about one of my favorite bands, and it was interesting to hear some of Riley's thoughts and opinions on each of the ELO records as well. Hopefully our discussion helped encourage some of you listening to check out some more ELO material if you haven't already heard it. I think they're an amazing band with a really rewarding and diverse catalog of music. So I can't recommend their music enough. Again, the Good Timin' podcast has been on break for the summer, but that break is finally just about over. We plan on starting our second season within the next week or two. So there will be plenty more Beach Boys discussion and content on the way soon. So as always, if you like this episode and want to hear more, feel free to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. We greatly appreciate the support as it motivates us to make more episodes in the future. And also, as a reminder, the podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So there's plenty of different places to listen and keep up with the show. So thank you again, everyone, for listening, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.